It was a Friday night, and the guys were over for our weekly poker game. My husband had invited his friend Steve, who lived next door, along with a few colleagues from work. It was supposed to be an evening of laughter, cards, and a few beers, but I had no idea it would turn into a night that would change everything for some time. I had been feeling restless in my marriage. The excitement had faded, and I found myself drawn to Steve in ways I knew I shouldn't be. There was something about his presence, his deep voice, the way he laughed, and the way he looked at me, that made my heart race. It was an innocent attraction at first, but deep down, I knew I was playing with fire. As the night progressed, I made sure the guys had enough snacks and drinks, occasionally stealing glances at Steve. Our eyes met more than once, and every time they did, I felt a rush of adrenaline. My husband was focused on the game, and the other guys were too caught up in their own conversations to notice the silent tension growing between us. At one point, Steve leaned in just a little too close when he asked me for another drink. I could feel his breath against my skin, sending a shiver down my spine. It was a subtle moment, but it ignited something deep inside me. I had never been the kind of woman to cross the line, but that night, temptation whispered in my ear, coaxing me toward the edge. As the game went on, I found myself sitting closer to Steve. Our arms brushed, and I could feel the warmth radiating from him. It was dangerous, exhilarating, and completely reckless. My husband was only a few feet away, and yet I couldn't help myself. Steve noticed too. His glances became more lingering, and there was a silent challenge in his eyes. Then the moment arrived. My husband excused himself to the bathroom, leaving me and Steve alone for a brief moment. My heart pounded in my chest as I whispered, "Meet me in the bedroom in 5 minutes." He hesitated for only a second before nodding, his expression filled with anticipation. I quickly slipped upstairs, my mind racing with thoughts of what I was about to do. This was wrong, I knew that, but the thrill of it all clouded my judgment. The door creaked open and there he was. Steve wasted no time. He pressed me against the wall, his lips crashing against mine in a kiss that stole my breath away. I clung to him, letting go of all my doubts and fears. We stumbled toward the bed, our hands desperate to explore what had been forbidden for so long. But just as passion took hold, a sound from downstairs froze us in place. Footsteps. Panic surged through me as I realized my husband was coming upstairs. We scrambled to fix our clothes, trying to erase the evidence of our betrayal, but it was too late. The door swung open, and there he stood. His eyes darted between me and Steve, taking in the disheveled clothes, my flushed face, and the undeniable guilt painted across both of us. For a moment there was nothing but silence, a suffocating, deafening silence. Then he spoke. "What the hell is going on here?" His voice was low and dangerous, filled with a mix of anger and heartbreak. I opened my mouth, searching for an excuse, but nothing came out. There was no way to explain this, no way to undo what had been done. Steve grabbed his jacket, his face pale. "I'm sorry," he muttered, before quickly slipping past my husband and disappearing down the stairs. But my husband wasn't looking at him anymore. His gaze was locked onto me, and it was filled with something far worse than anger. Betrayal. "How could you?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "How could you do this to me, to us?" Tears welled in my eyes, but I knew they wouldn't make a difference. I had shattered something between us that could never be repaired. The following days were unbearable. My husband barely spoke to me, and when he did, it was cold, distant. The house, once filled with warmth and love, felt like a prison. I tried to apologize, to explain, but he wouldn't listen. And then, one evening, he sat down beside me and said the words I had been dreading. "I can't stay with you." My heart clenched. "Please," I begged, tears streaming down my face. "It was a mistake. I love you." He shook his head. "Love isn't enough without trust. And I don't trust you anymore." With that, our marriage came to an end. The divorce was quick, but the pain lingered. I moved into a small apartment in the city, trying to rebuild my life. But the guilt weighed on me every single day. One afternoon, I ran into Steve. He looked just as lost as I felt. "I'm sorry for everything," he said, his voice heavy with regret. "I never wanted to hurt anyone." I nodded. Neither did I, but we did. We stood in silence, both of us knowing we could never go back. Finally, we said our goodbyes, and I knew that was the last time I would ever see him. Months passed. My ex-husband moved on, found someone new. I saw them once in a cafe, laughing, holding hands. He looked happy, and I realized, perhaps for the first time, that I had truly lost him. I needed to find a way to move on, to forgive myself, so I packed my bags and left the city, seeking solace in a quiet mountain town. I spent my days hiking, meditating, trying to heal. One evening, as I watched the sunset over a quiet lake, I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I imagined all the pain, the regret, the guilt dissolving into the wind. I couldn't change the past, but I could change the future. And maybe, just maybe, I could find peace again.